Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Trend Report. I'm glad you're joining me today for what I know is going to be a really fun and hopefully inspiring conversation for all of you today. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Brian Piper. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm great, Sid. Thanks so much for having me on.
So, Brian, would please take a moment and introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
So currently, I am the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. And most of my job revolves around looking at content performance data, figuring out what content is working, what content is not working, and how to make sure that we're putting the right channel or the right content out on the right channels for the right audience. And I,
Oh,
I also, work across the entire institution. I started out just in the communications department, and things went so well that now they've got me working across the entire institution. And then I also do consulting for other higher ed institutions.
okay, you forgot something very important there in who you are and what you do because you're actually now a best-selling author.
Yes, I am. I'm the co-author of the second edition of Epic Content Marketing. My other co-author is Joe Polizzi, who wrote the first edition of that book 10 years ago.
Okay. So, which is why the title of this episode is called Epic Content, because I want to talk about what is epic content. But before we dive into that, I would love to know how you got into the world of content creation. Because it's not necessarily something, especially people in our age bracket. I'm dating you, I think, a little bit, anyways, that say, hey, I'm going to create content. So, how did you actually get into the world of content creation or content marketing?
Yeah, well, I was a web developer like out of college and spent years doing that. And wasn't really very talented at it or very happy doing it. They usually would put me on, updating the content on the website and optimizing it for search. Back in 1996, we called it web positioning, and now everybody knows it as SEO, as search engine optimization. So I did that for years. Worked for a variety of different companies. Worked at an ad agency as their web manager. So got into marketing, kind of understood the principles of marketing, and then in 2014, I read the first edition of Epic Content Marketing, and it's like, wow, you can sell things by telling stories. You can give away content to people to help them solve their problems and answer the questions that they have. And just by doing that, you can bring them into your community and set yourself up as a trusted expert so that then when they have to make a decision about what services to use or what products to buy, they know that you're an expert and they can come to you and trust the information that you're gonna give them. So, that changed my entire process. I was incredibly inspired by that book, and within the first week after reading that, I went right down to our marketing department, and I told the new vice president of marketing that she needed to hire me as her digital marketing manager, 'cause I couldn't say content marketing manager because
Sure.
no one knew what that was 10 years ago. So she did. She gave me a chance. And within the first year, we doubled our search traffic to our website and increased our sales and conversion rate. And, that went on. I worked there for 4 more years, and that's what got me into my work at the university.
Okay. Awesome. So it's kind of by accident, all basically inspired by a book that you read.
Inspired by one book. Yep. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
now you're the co-author of the second edition of that book. So obviously along the way you met Joe and got to know him. And I've heard the story of how you kept pestering him about writing another book, writing, when are you going to update it? When are you going to update it? And I think what you're at convention somewhere or something, he goes, I'll update it if you write it with me.
That's right.
Yeah,
And I
that's
was
great.
at first I thought he was, just kind of joking, offhanded comment. And I went home and thought about it. I was like, this is a golden opportunity. I have to at least see if he was serious. I reached out to him the next day and I was like, if you're serious, I will absolutely do this. And he said, well, it's a lot of work. You're going to do the heavy lifting. And yeah, I said, yes, absolutely. So it was a great project and learned a ton along the way. Even though I had been doing this for 10 years
Mhm.
already, I was surprised at how much there was behind the scenes
Mhm.
and new ideas that other people that I interviewed other people that I used for the case studies talked about, and it was a fantastic experience.
So, what I find interesting about this is you read a book that inspired you. And from that book, you took action that led you to a new career. And then you learned, you grew, and that led you to the current position that you're in today, that led you to being a co author in this book. And talk about life's journey and how life's journey, you never know where it's going to take you or what it's going to do. You may be the best laid plans, but when things are in front of you, and these were things that were laying in front of you that you just took opportunity or took the opportunity, I think it's a fantastic story of that evolution because you picked up that book.
Yeah, and it all comes down to, pursuing those opportunities, and I see it
Mhm.
all the time with content where people put out a piece of content and they just leave it alone and hope that it's gonna keep working, and without knowing what opportunities your content can create for you, you don't know what new content you should create or what
Sure.
old content you should go back and reshare and re-optimize. So it's all about pursuing those opportunities and always keeping your eyes open for the next door that will open for you.
So I want to dive in here to a couple of the things that you had just said. But first off, let's talk about content. What is content? Can you define it for the people that are joining us today?
Yeah, I mean, all of us are content creators. I mean, my my stepmother is a content creator. She puts out content, she puts out posts on Facebook, she goes out and she's even sending an email. I mean, anything you create that has, original thought that you're gonna share with people, that's content. Now, when we're talking about content marketing, that is content that's created, quality content that's created with the sole purpose of eventually convincing people to take some sort of action, whether that is just recognizing you as an expert and having them come find more of your content, or if that's driving them to sign up for your newsletter or subscribe to your podcast, or, to finally make a purchase, buy some of your products or services.
Okay. So I'm going to break that down for just a minute. You're saying that we're all content creators in some form or another. If we're posting on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or our Facebook or Instagram or wherever, if we post something, we're creating content. And one of the
Absolutely.
key terms there you used was original thoughts. So it's what we're thinking in that moment. And sometimes these are political, sometimes they're family, sometimes they're spiritual, sometimes they're business, but you're sharing your original thoughts about something. But then the distinction that you drew was content marketing, and that's when you're doing it, but then you're asking for, or you're putting in a call to action to get the person who's consuming the content, who's following you or discovers you on any of these platforms, to take action, whether that's buy my book, subscribe to my email newsletter, follow me, whatever it is, you're asking them to take action. And that's when it becomes content marketing.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Okay. So now you laid out in the beginning a quick little story for us, which I think is very appropriate because this is what we're doing today is a little bit of storytelling and taking people on a journey of you, but also learning from you about the things that you've been doing. And you took us on a little bit of a journey in telling us the story about what you should be doing and what you discovered, which is telling stories, that you could have a job that told stories that solved people's problems and that allowed you to become a trusted expert. And I thought that was a great, you did that in like 45 seconds, I think, told us all that. That this is a great example of a storytelling, but also a great example of what you should be doing. So let's break each of these down for just a minute. What exactly is storytelling?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, humans love stories. We love to hear the exposition, the setup. We want to get involved. We want to be brought into it. We want to be able to associate ourselves with somebody else with something that's going on. So being able to create a story, and it doesn't always have to be, um, a case study or a particular example of something, but just being able to let someone know that you understand the problems they're dealing with. You understand the questions that they're asking and why they're dealing with those questions. Um, so we have a case study in the book, River Pools and Spas. So they were a company that manufactured fiberglass, or no. They installed pools. So that's all they did. They installed pools, and, back in 2009 session, they weren't able to sell any pools. People that had ordered pools the year before were pulling out. They almost had to,
Mhm.
close the shop and shut down. And so the owner of the company, Marcus Sheridan, decided that he was going to go to their website and just put down all the questions that people had ever asked him about installing pools. And then he was going to put down the answers to those questions and let people know that he understood why they were having these problems and what they didn't understand about that particular issue that they were trying to solve.
Mhm.
And he just put that information out there for people. And people started coming to his website when they were doing research about buying pools. Why are pools so expensive? And what's the cost? And what am I spending my money on? Answered all of those questions, and now they are one of the largest manufacturers of fiberglass pool inserts in the world. And Marcus Sheridan is a consultant that teaches people how to do content marketing,
Wow. All because he started answering questions.
answering
So,
questions, telling stories about,
mm,
understanding people's problems and concerns.
well, you said it perfectly. People identify with stories, and stories don't have to be emotional that pull at your heartstring. They can be, I mean, they're all different types of stories. And a lot of times we think about a story, we think about how it makes us feel. And that's really what the point of a story is, but that doesn't always have to be sad or emotional, right? And it can be fun. You can laugh, you can play, but you're going to remember the story because of the way that it makes you feel. And so telling the story is really, really important. But it also is important to do the second thing that you talked about, which is through your storytelling, how do you solve your ideal customer or your customer's problem? And so, this in the office furniture industry is something that I believe is a huge hurdle for us in understanding how a task chair or a desk or a task light or a panel system or a phone booth, how that solves someone's problem. So, how do we go about identifying the problems that we solve when we sell such a physical object like office furniture?
Well, I mean, the example that we just talked about, they were selling pools.
Mhm.
Now, people buy all sorts of different pools, right? They have all sorts of different
Mhm.
projects that they have in mind. They have all sorts of different installation issues. It's the same with office furniture. People have different office setups. They need different solutions based on their particular, how many people they have, what their setup is, what the ergonomic design is that they're looking for.
Mhm.
So being able to understand those problems and, take every question that you have been asked while you're selling furniture to people and think about who are all the different people who are going to be asking this question. Really understanding your customer is
Mhm.
one of the foundational elements of content marketing. You have to know your customer, you have to know your business strategy. Are you just trying to sell more furniture, like as much as you can, or are you trying to sell specific pieces that, have particular needs? Do you focus on a specific niche? Are you just selling to, dentist's office or professionals, or are you selling to schools, or, it depends on what the different need is,
Mhm.
will drive what content you should be creating, because you wanna make sure your content that you're putting out there, you're putting your time into, is reaching the right audience.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, it's great if you go out and create a bunch of content and all sorts of people come and consume it, but if that doesn't relate to your end business goal, to your strategic goals, to the products that you sell in your particular area of focus,
Mhm.
you're wasting your time.
So this is where I think we need to, as an industry, really understand. And first off, Brian, you did a great job answering that question for somebody that knows nothing about office furniture and that's not in the office furniture industry. So I really appreciate that you're responding to me putting you on the spot like that. But what I see is the biggest problem is when it relates to content, that all we do is talk about our product. We talk about the product itself. We talk about the features and the benefits of the product. And, we'll just pick on a task chair for a second. We'll talk about all the features of a task chair, the type of back that it has, adjustable arms, and the type of casters, and how high the mechanism goes, and all this kind of stuff, and the ergonomic benefits of it. And that's all we see is this picture or this video of the product and all these facts about the product. And then when I go and I, look around or snoop, if you will, and I see who's commenting and who's liking and who's reposting that content, it's all the employees or salespeople that work there. And there's no engagement, true engagement outside of your organization. So talk to me a minute about why that is and why product first is not the right solution.
Because your customers don't care about your product. They care about how you can solve their problems. So instead of saying, our chairs are ergonomic and they're fully adjustable, say, do you have back pain? Maybe it's your office chair. Here's, an office chair that helps people with back pains. Here's a person who's one of our customers already who had back pain and now they're using this chair and they don't have back pain. And talk about them. Feature your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Feature the people whose problems you've already solved and talk about how you help them find the right solution for them. And now, not only does your new customer recognize that you might be able to solve their problem, but they recognize that you care about them, not just the sale. And that's so key. And that's one of the biggest problems in brands is that they're all about, the features and the product itself. And, no one cares about your widget. They
Mm-hmm.
care about how your widget will help them fix their problems,
Mm-hmm.
create a solution custom to them.
So, a few years ago, last year, I was involved with a large group setting, and I've said this before this, but there's about 50, 75 people in this group setting, and I was speaking in front of the group, and we were talking about content. And my challenge to them was, and this is what I said to them, and I still say it to this day: sell your product without selling your product. And
Right.
you do that by what you just described, which is telling a story of how your product solves a problem, in this case, the chair and back pain, and how it solves someone's problem, which also leads to increased productivity, better employee health and wellness, which also leads to the business's reduction in health expenses and workman's comp. And there's so many ripple effects here that go into play with this. And we need to talk about all those things, but yet we talk about product first. But when you do it the way you described it, then you become the last component of this, the trusted expert, where people
Absolutely.
come to you for seeking information.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to accept the fact that people may come to you and by reading your content, they may decide that your chair isn't the right solution for them at that time. But the next time they come shopping for a desk or a lamp, they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to go back to that site because I found great information that really helped me find the right solution for me. I'm gonna go back to them because I trust them to help me
Mm-hmm.
find the right solution again. Oh, and look at that, this time, it is their product."
Mm-hmm. And what happens when they come to you, Brian? When they come to you, where are you saying when they come to you? Where is that? Where's that home base where they're coming to you?
So one of the things we talk about in the book is rented land versus owned land. So owned land is things like your website, your blog, your newsletter, some place where you have control of the distribution. You are able to gather information, first party data that you can collect, email addresses, that sort of thing from your customer. Now, rented land are things like social media channels, where you don't really have any control over the distribution, not even control over your account, over the data. So we tell people focus on your owned land. Now, use all that rented land, promote there, sell there, but you want to eventually drive people back to either your website
Mm-hmm.
or have them sign up for your newsletter or, have them basically come back to some location that you have better control over and access over. And one of the
Okay.
other things we tell people is find one channel to start with. People want to create content and they want to spread it everywhere and they want to do the YouTube and the TikTok and all those different options. But the key to be really good is to focus on one channel to start with.
Mhm.
Build your audience on that channel, and then you can go promote on other channels and drive people back to that content. And eventually, once you build a big enough following, then you can go add additional channels to target different audiences. But the most important thing is not to spread yourself too thin at first because you're going to spend so much time creating content, not going to be able to look
Mhm.
at whether or not that content's actually working.
So, so good, because I love the definition between rented and owned land. Very, very clear. We all understand what that means, right? And so if I'm on Instagram and I'm talking on Instagram and I'm doing reels and I'm posting this on Instagram, I'm certainly looking at the vanity metrics and I'm looking at who comments and who likes. But the real question is, you're hanging out with, I don't know, 5,000 people on rented land. How many of those 5,000 people have come to your own land, which is your website, who have joined into your newsletter or opted in to learn more about you or looked at your product? Great, great analogy. So what we should be doing is taking them and pushing them from social media to our website so that we capture the data, so that we won't dive into this. But, if TikTok goes away, all these people are talking about this now. What happens to their bazillions of followers when if TikTok goes away, and where do they go? You got to bring them into your own ecosystem. And when you get them there, you got to make sure that they have an amazing experience with you and your brand. So, can you talk just for a minute about customer experience on your website or on your own land for a minute? It's couple of key things you should be looking for, pay attention to.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes right back to that customer first principle. When a customer comes to your website, you can't just be telling them everything about how great you are and what great products you have. You really need to be organize your website, structure your website so that people can find the solutions to their problems when they get there.
Mm-hmm.
Have it, organized. I don't know if, enough about office furniture,
It doesn't
but
matter.
have it
Principles are the
organized
same.
to fit their needs.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're looking for specific products, by category, you can do it that way, or they're in a particular, if you have a particular niche of, market that you deal with and you
Mm-hmm.
sell to, make sure they understand that right up front, that this is what this is who you are, and you talk to them as people. Don't just try to sell them and push them
Mm-hmm.
and drive them to, your biggest selling chair because, that's where you're gonna get the most revenue. Really think about why they're coming to your site, what problems they're, finding and asking you. And the easiest way to do that is just to talk to your customers and find out how they're searching. If you have, 100 really good customers, tell 20 of them that you're gonna send them, I don't know, $25 gift card or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. If they come take a survey and then come talk to you one-on-one through, Zoom or some other channel, and just ask them, "When you're looking for new office furniture, what are you looking for? How are you
Mm-hmm.
finding that? What questions are you asking? What problems do you have specifically?" And they'll appreciate that you really wanna understand where they're coming from and what issues
True.
they're having.
So one of the things I think that is important about this is we haven't really talked much about it, but is the content that you create that's on your website, like writing blogs and writing original articles and things of that nature that aren't just always sales first, right? It's also one of the things that helps you get discovered by other people, because when you do a good job at writing, then Google picks that up and they see you as a trusted authority on the topic. And then they will start showing you in search results and sending people to your website to actually learn more or to engage more. And you got to make sure that the experience when the customer gets there is really, really good. I'm going to give you an example. We're looking to buy an investment property, a small second home. My daughter's actually going to live in it while she's in college, right? And so I'm searching for real estate. So I land on this website and I type in my search criteria and I see all these properties listed. I go to click on it and I get a pop up. The only way that I can see the details of that house are when I create an account and I give this person everything about me. It's not just my name and my email address, my phone number, it's all this stuff. And I stopped. I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I will be ready for that maybe in a couple of hours, but give me the freedom to do my own thing out here. And then if I see something I want, then I'm going to reach out. But they put a gateway in front of me. Literally, Brian, I was so irritated yesterday just because I wanted to search and this one particular site just kept stopping me every time.
Yeah, we have a lot of conversations with, brands particularly, but even in higher ed, gating your content, especially that top of funnel content for those
Mhm,
first customers that are coming into your website initially, they're just gonna see that as intrusive and, they know why you're collecting that information. You're gonna reach out to them. You're gonna send them something. You're gonna
mhm,
email them with all this stuff that they don't want. Our email inboxes are busy enough as it is.
mhm,
Give away that content when they're actually ready to, make a decision or reach out to you to ask a question about something. Sure,
mhm,
then make them fill out a form so that they know they're gonna get valuable information. If you I hate signing up for something just to get past that gate and then getting the content and going, "Oh, this isn't what I wanted. This doesn't fit my needs." And now you've given them your email address or,
mhm,
now you're gonna have to get calls from them or unsubscribe from their newsletters that
mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
Guys, just think about that experience for just a minute that I had and how Brian responded to it. It's really, really important that we pay attention to how people feel and how we treat them. And this is a way of treating them when they're on our website, right? But Brian, everything you've shared so far has been absolutely fantastic. I always learn from being around you and hearing you speak. But I want to shift the gear for just a minute, and then we'll talk about the book for a hot second, okay? But let's talk about the people that are intimidated by creating content. And just like, oh, I can't put my face on video, or oh, nobody's going to engage in this post, or I have nothing to say. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say about something. What type of encouragement, or what would you say to first time content creators or people that are just the lurkers that really need to get in the game? What would you say to them to help them take the first step forward?
So that's a great question, Sid. And we always tell people it's important to put your content out on channels where your audience exists, right? So if your audience prefers podcasts, then that's the channel that you should be thinking about. But if you aren't comfortable on that channel, if you don't feel if you don't like your voice, if you don't like your appearance on camera, then you shouldn't do a YouTube show, shouldn't do a podcast. If you feel more comfortable writing, then definitely a blog or a newsletter is the way to go. And people worry too much about how they're going to sound or, oh, I'm not a professional writer. People aren't looking for that. People are looking for real content. They're looking for, especially in this age of AI generated content, people want to see your personality. They want to see your humanity. They want to know that, sure, you're going to misspell a word once in a while in your blog, although there are great tools to prevent that. But, um, so just start on a channel, make a commitment to yourself that so I started a newsletter. It's a tip of the week. And I started that 29 weeks ago. And when I did that, I said, all right, I'm going to do this for 10 weeks, 10 times. Anybody can write 10 short emails. I mean, we write so many emails every day. So just think of it like writing an email to your friend. And that's what I always do when I'm writing those emails. I
Mhm.
picture one of my customers in my head and I write her name down the first time I start writing the email out. And then the whole email, I'm just talking to her. It's just very conversational. Here's a tip that will help you in your content marketing. And then at the end, I, take her name off the top. But that content is just a conversation that I'm having with her, trying to help her solve her problems. So, that's my recommendations to people first starting out is just try it. Most podcasters, when you talk to them and ask them, the successful podcasters, you ask them to go back and look at their first episodes, they were horrible. I mean,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Beast was on YouTube for 10 years before he ever started building a following. But it's just working that muscle and getting consistent about, getting in the habit of doing that. And now I don't even, think twice. Oh, got to do the newsletter
Mm.
and put it together. And as I'm going through my weekly process, I'm always looking for things. It's made me much more aware. Oh, here's a perfect little use case that I can, leverage for my newsletter next week. And then as you start building those, you'll start looking at other people who are doing podcasts or doing
Mhm.
YouTube shows. And you're like, oh, that's something that I can pull and leverage and put into my show. So it just makes you pay attention a little more, but you have to just start doing it. And, nothing says that the first podcast that you record, you have to put out online and publish it. Do one or two and then, have some of your friends be your guests, in your
Mhm.
practice episodes. And maybe that's a great way to, start releasing content on a regular basis.
So at the end of the day, the answer is just start.
Just
Start
start. Yeah.
creating. Start creating.
Right.
So I'm not an advocate of anybody going back to episode 1, by the way. I'm not. Just in
Most
clear
people are.
full disclosure. But yeah, I was not really yeah, I don't know what I was doing in episode number 1. But here we
Nobody
are
does.
at episode 115 or 16, I believe. So it just start and keep going. Brian, what's your newsletter about?
So it's a one content marketing tip every week. So
Okay.
every Monday morning, you start off your day with one tip. And what I usually do is I tie it back to a personal story. So I'll put up a personal photo and, here's a story that goes along with that
That's
photo. And
great.
then here's how that relates to something that you should be doing with your content. And then I do like one or two little news articles about, what's going
Mhm.
on in the industry. But
That's awesome.
very short, and then always a call to action,
Mhm.
come to my website, learn more, look at the blog.
So we will be sure to drop the link to the newsletter so people can join up in our show notes. So if you're interested in joining Brian's newsletter, please go to the show notes and click the link there and you can sign up to be part of his newsletter. And so, Brian, as we start to wrap up today, let's talk about the book for just a minute. And I think you've already given us so many nuggets that are in the book, but give us like the 30,000 foot overview of the book and what it's about and why we would want to read it.
So the first edition was kind of all about what content marketing is because it was a new concept at the
Mhm.
time 10 years ago. So when we started looking at how we were going to do the second edition, at first we were like, well, we're just going to throw everything out. We're just going to start over new. It's 10 years, everything has changed in content marketing. And then once we started going through, we realized that most of the information that was in that first edition was still very valuable and applicable. So we took the first third of the book is really the first edition, updated. We put
Mhm.
in new case studies that are much more practical today because now we have, live studies of companies that have done amazing things with content marketing. And then, the second portion of the book, we talk about things like really using, all the different channels and how to optimize your content for those different channels. We talk about using data. We have so much more access to data. We can track things much
Mhm.
more closely now than we could 10 years ago. And then the last third of the book talks about, some of the new developments. It talks about the future of content marketing. It talks about using AI and Web3 and how to develop communities and super fans. So there's really something in there for everybody. The first edition was really focused on content marketers at big brands,
Mhm.
because that's all there was at the time. And this edition is also focused a lot on content entrepreneurs, small content creators who are using content either to, as a product, as a business
Mhm.
itself, or using it to help augment their, other business.
So, what I just heard is this book takes us on a journey, and each and every one of us can benefit from this book, whether you're currently creating content as an individual or you're not creating as an individual, or if you're a brand and you want to up your game as it relates to content. There's something in this book for everybody. So, we'll also drop a link to Amazon for all of you that would like to go buy the book, because knowing Brian, I've known Brian for a couple of years now, and he's one of the smartest people I've ever met as it relates to content, SEO strategies, and all these things. So I'm excited to grab my copy and read it. But at the end of the day, my encouragement to all of you is just to take that moment, and to start creating content that's going to bring people to your website. It's going to bring people to your owned land, as Brian said, so that you can start building your business, grow your business by bringing new people in. So, Brian, I really, really appreciate you coming on today and sharing all your amazing insights. Any final thoughts from you today as we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most rewarding things about writing the book or about putting out content is when people come to you and thank you for helping them solve their problems. I mean, it's such an amazing feeling. You're not just selling them something and having them leave and give you money. You're actually helping them solve a problem and making their lives better. So
Mhm.
thank you very much, Sid. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm going to wrap us up with a quick story. Saturday night, Friday night. My family and I went out to eat dinner. My daughter was home from school. We just went to a local little Mexican restaurant and we're just doing our thing and we're leaving the restaurant. We're all chatting and laughing. As I'm walking out the door, this guy grabs my shoulder and says, "Hey, Sid." And I turned and looked at him and I knew him. And then he introduced himself again. His name is Joey. Joey, if you're listening, I just want to thank you for stopping me when we left the restaurant the other night. But he stopped me and said, "Hey, I just want to say thank you because I really enjoy your podcast. I really enjoy the articles you've written. You're doing a good job and I really enjoy your content." So my message there is people are listening, people are watching, people are reading, whether you realize it or not. Whether the vanity metrics ever say that they engage, people are paying attention. And the only way that you can grow and make those types of impact and bring those types of people in is if you just get started. Just get started. Right, Brian?
That's it. Exactly. So it's a great story.
So, Brian, if our community would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
BrianWPiper.com is my website, or I'm Brian W. Piper on, pretty much every social channel, and you can find me almost anywhere.
We will drop all of that information in the show notes so you guys can click on it and go connect with Brian. Just remember, if you do reach out to him, please let him know you heard him here on the Trend Report. We appreciate you, Brian, for being here today. And for everybody listening, go out there and make today great. And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.